On this week's MetPy Monday, we're going to look at the temp file package and see how it can help you not have to manage creation and deletion of temporary files and folders. Welcome to another MetPy Monday. Hello, I'm John Lehman, a software engineer for Unidata. When you're learning to program or first dealing with computers, a lot of people find the concept kind of strange that, the computer just does what you ask it as many times as you want and very fast. It doesn't care if it's asked to do a repetitive task, and it doesn't really wear out. Now, sure, you might be able to make some arguments about solid state drives, but let's forget those. So when you're doing calculations, sometimes you need to just put them somewhere temporary, and maybe RAM is not going to be sufficient, or you don't want to put all of those results in RAM. Well, sometimes a temporary file is the solution. We need to dump some results out, some intermediate result, and read it back in. And oftentimes we'll create a file name like junk.txt, and we'll write everything into it. And then if we remember later on, we go back and delete it. And that's okay, but sometimes junk.txt can grow to be a few gigabytes, and that sits there and takes up space on your hard drive until you remember to go deal with it, or you write in proper handling of it. Same with directories. Sometimes we need a temporary directory to move some files into so that our program has somewhere to work on a copy of those, and then we'll move them back out or delete them when we're done with them later. Maybe they're going to be changed. Maybe they're a network location and we need to copy them into a temporary directory locally and work on those because the network location might not exist or the connection might not be stable. Well, you could code all that up yourself, but you could just use the temp file package in Python. Let's take a look at how to do that. First, let's look at how to create a temporary file, and we'll use it and destroy it. So I'm going to use a context manager. Now you can even write your own context managers, but that's a subject for a whole nother MetPy Monday. But I really like the idea of context managers because they handle all of the closing out and initialization of things for you. You don't have to remember, okay, I'm going to open the file, I'm going to work on it, and then I'm going to close it. You can open the file with a context manager, and whenever you're done and it goes out of scope, the closing just happens for you. So with tempfile.temporary file as F, so I'm opening that file like object as F. I'm going to call write, and I'm going to say, here are my intermediate results that I do not want to hold in RAM. I'm going to seek, and then I'm going to print. I go back to the beginning of the file and then print out what's there. Now, what do we see? Well, it says a bytes-like object is required, not a string. So we have to put a B out here in front to make this a bytes-like object for the writing for temp file. And now we see we wrote it, we seek back to the beginning, and then we read it back out, and there it is. And now that file is gone off my system. So we created a file on disk, wrote to it, and now the context manager has closed it. Now you can do this without the context manager. You could say something like f equals tempfile dot temporary file, and then do things to that file, and then call f.close. But again, I don't really know why you would do that instead of using the context manager. The context manager just reads a little more cleanly and saves you some of that work. Now let's look at a temporary directory, and for that I'm going to import from pathlib the path object because that's going to make working with this directory easier. If you're not familiar with pathlib and the path object, they're a great cross-platform path management and creation system that lets you work on Windows, on Unix, on Mac, all very easily. So I highly recommend using those. I'm going to use the context manager again with tempfile.temporary directory as, I'm going to call it tempdir name. And just to prove that we're actually creating it, the temporary directory is, we'll print it out. There's my temporary directory. You see each time that I'm running this, it's changing because that directory is being created. We're not doing anything with it. And then when it leaves scope from the context manager, it's being removed from my system. So it's not taking up any space. I'm not shoving files in there and forgetting it. How many of us have a folder right now on our computer that's called delete me or delete me to, or has a date in it or who knows what? I'm guessing a fair number of people. Now let's do something in here. I'm going to open and use my path object on tempdir name to convert the string into a path object. Put mydata.text in there. I'm going to open it in write mode as F, and then some dummy stuff. Now, I've exited that context manager, so I've closed the file now, mydata.text. I'm going to open it again. This is just to prove that it's persistent. I'm going to open it in read mode. And we will print out f.read. And there we go. We created our temp directory, we created the file, we wrote some dummy stuff to it, we closed it, then we opened it again in read mode and printed it out. And now it's all gone because we exited the context manager for the temporary directory. Now, if you don't want to use the context manager, you can call tempdirname.cleanup. And that will remove the directory contents and remove the directory from your system. So I hope that you found this useful. It's not a very complicated package to use, and the objects are pretty straightforward, but it can save you a lot of management and easily give you a place to dump those temporary things. I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you on next week's MetPy Monday.